There are four parts to tonight's presentation. First, we'll talk about some of the challenges that we need, and I won't read the slides to you. We'll talk about some of the work that we're considering, the budgetary cost impact, and next steps. So just some of the challenges, and to everyone who is viewing this at home, just want to share, as we do with all of these presentations, we'll clip this part of the meeting out. It will be posted to our website. The meeting voiceover will have the slides to accompany them so that there's context for the presentation. That should be available on our website at some point tomorrow during the day. So we have challenges in all of our schools. In Brookside, we're short on classrooms. Enrollment continues to grow, which is a terrific thing. Our needs continue to grow, and we have to be prepared to meet those needs. So there is a shortage of space at Brookside, and it's no secret to anyone who's been in that building recently. We need more space. Mohansick has very similar circumstances. Music is held on a stage at Mohansick. It's not something I'm proud of, and it's something that nobody in our community should be proud of. Music deserves its own classroom. We're delivering services in hallways because we're trying to make use of every square foot that we have to meet the needs of students. Crampon isn't much better. These pictures are a lot more aesthetically pleasing, but make no mistake, those are tiny, tiny rooms that we have divided up to give our students the spaces that they need, that they deserve. But we can do better. And I think we ought to do better. Middle school, now I'm showing you the worst of the pictures. Not every room looks like that. But that's a reality in some of our classrooms. Top left, that's a band classroom. That's the reality. Top right, that's some of the cabinetry in some of our classrooms. Now, the vast majority of our classrooms do not look like that. But not one. One classroom looking like that is too many. Our kids deserve better. Mine and yours. Some of the lab countertops, those should be replaced. We look at the high school. We have needs in the high school as well. We have a music and art wing that needs to be renovated, needs to be upgraded. We have one turf field on our athletic campus. I would tell you that one's not enough. We need more space, and it's not just about athletics. Anyone who has had a middle school child knows that when it rains outside, recess is indoors, not just on that day, but on the next day, and maybe even the day after that until the mud can go away. A turf athletic field addresses that. And the mud is a situation that's real. It is difficult to bring children out for recess on a day or two after heavy rain. And lately it feels like we've had a lot of heavy rain. And I don't see that changing. With regard to some of the other needs that we have arrived at a proposal that our steering committee, and my thanks to the steering committee for all of the time that you've invested, is to put small additions onto each of our 3 elementary schools. The scope of the additions and some necessary interior work for those additions are listed on the slide. It's essentially 6 classrooms, my apologies, 6 classrooms, 1-story and some 2-story additions in each of our elementary schools. The question that's most often asked is, well, you have French Hill. Why not just reopen French Hill? It's a really good question, makes a lot of sense. I'd be asking the same question. But there are 2 reasons why French Hill doesn't make much sense. And we've explored that. We convened a committee, and all of the presentations we've delivered are on our website. We convened a committee as early as 2019 to look at what our options are. And all of the options of, do you move 5th grade over to the middle school? We studied them all. This is the option that makes most sense, with French Hill being a close second. And when I say close second, there's actually quite a bit of distance between option 1 and option 2. And the reason is, first of all, new construction versus renovation costs are actually quite similar. To retrofit an old school with the security, technology infrastructure, the bus staging area, and all of the other things that we've grown accustomed to in our 5 operating schools. It's quite expensive to retrofit into a school. New construction actually is more cost effective. Yes, but we put a pre-K in French Hill. The beauty of pre-K is there's no technology infrastructure. There's no Wi-Fi in the classrooms, no smart boards in the classroom, no computers, iPads, so on. The same security standards don't apply that we have in our 5 operating schools, although it is a secure facility. But the other big part that doesn't make French Hill a viable option are the annual recurring expenses. When you open up a new school, you're hiring a new principal, new assistant principal, school nurse, clerical staff, 2 daytime custodians, 2 nighttime custodians, social workers, psychologist, and I can keep going. SRO, a new bus run, that's about $500,000. The annual recurring expenses for the taxpayer is about $3 million. That's each year to open up a new school. So yes, you have a new school there, and you have a school there, and that's terrific. But I just can't see us passing that burden on to the taxpayers at $3 million a year. If we extend Mohansick, we already have a principal there. We have an assistant principal, a nurse, an SRO, and staff. Maybe it's an additional cleaner for that new wing of the building, a nighttime cleaner. But we avoid those annual recurring expenses through these additions as opposed to reopening an idled school. So here's what the plan has been, and I will be presenting at every meeting. I've been presenting at every meeting, I believe, since late August, and I'll be presenting through the time that we complete this project. This is an overview of Brookside. We're proposing 2 one-story additions. Yes, we're encroaching a little bit on the ball field. We'll be able to manage that work. We have great architects who are here with us tonight. We have great construction managers, and we'll be able to work through that. At Mohansick, it's something similar. You'll see the top left corner of the building. We're proposing a 2-story, 6-classroom addition. Here's Crampond. Bottom left of the screen, you'll see that we're proposing another 2-story, 6-classroom addition. At the middle school and high school, we're not adding on to the buildings, but we're going to be proposing renovations to those buildings. That's a floor plan of the middle school. All of those areas on top and in the middle of the screen that have a purple border, those classrooms are being renovated in the middle school. New hardware, the hardware is original. The cabinetry is original to the building. New ceilings and lights if they haven't been replaced. If they have been replaced recently, we will not be adding ceilings and lights to those. New flooring, paint. We're looking at renovating this room. Look around. Every middle schooler comes through this room every day. I agree. So we can refresh that space and this space, and we should. We should do that for our students, for our children. The lockers. If anyone has had a middle schooler come through, those half lockers aren't the most friendly to a child. We see that. We've spoken to enough students to understand what the reality is for their day-to-day experience in our buildings. We want to make that better. At the high school level, we're looking to completely revamp the music wings, as we are in the middle school, and the art rooms here as well, and to really establish a space for our science research program, our world-renowned science research program. We're looking to add an additional turf field. That's the baseball field. Anyone who has been on that field knows that it's not very conducive to drainage. It retains water, and it's difficult to play in. In fact, many of our baseball games are played over at Granite Knolls. In the outfield, there's a multi-purpose field. That would allow for field hockey. It can be lined for soccer and lacrosse as well. And now, everything that I just touched upon, up to this point, is in our first proposition. The first proposition, I'll get to that in a moment, is coming in at around $46 million. Now, what impact will that have on taxpayers? One of the things that we heard from our community is that the community wants safety and security upgrades, which will be part of this bond, and they want something that does not impact taxes. That's something that came through loud and clear in our survey, and we had about 600 community members participate in the survey. We really appreciate that. The input was valuable. Everything that we've shown, including the additions and the renovations to the middle school, high school, and this turf field, will have no additional tax burden. So this will come in at about $46 million in between. I believe that we can, and I shared this months ago, that I thought that there was a pathway forward for us to come out with a tax neutral bond, a bond that does not raise taxes any more than they are currently. And through some retiring debt, through some very strategic planning with our fiscal capital reserve fund, we can do all of this at no additional impact to taxpayers. Now, there are some additional items that we have received in feedback from our community. So our board is well aware of this. For those who are viewing or will be viewing this presentation from home, I won't read the slide to you, but there are some other really important items that we have to address. The cafeteria and servery at Mohansick. After we renovate this cafeteria, I'm operating under the assumption that the first bond at no impact to taxes will pass. Mohansick's cafeteria and servery will be the only cafeteria that has not been upgraded in the past 5 years. And the children of Mohansick deserve to have that facility upgraded because it is in a similar situation to this one. The servery line is inefficient. Children have to go out into the hallway and go into the kitchen area to get their food. It should be a little more user-friendly for 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-old children. We're looking at an additional turf field. And I'll show you an example of that in a moment. We're looking at a generator for critical infrastructure and also an area outside for bathrooms and a concession stand. For anyone who's attended a game on our campuses, I think you'd agree that the bathroom facilities could be upgraded. And that's part of the calculus here. This is the proposed addition, Proposition 2. It has the original field, that's in Proposition 1. The additional proposition would provide a fully lined field where football, soccer, lacrosse, obviously boys and girls, can play on this field and any other field and any other sport that can be played on turf. And then we're also looking at a bathroom and concession stand facility as well, and the placement of that. This would assist with middle school recess, especially the addition of some basketball and pickleball courts on the side there. You can see one, but the plan is to have more than one, 2 or 3. And that also gives our middle school students another option for recess. And it gives our high school students options as well. Proposition 1, I shared this with you. We're going to post this to our website so that the community all has this information. There wouldn't be an additional impact to taxes with Proposition 1. It gets us the space that we need. And we're not overbuilding. That's the important thing to remember here. There are enrollment studies that were conducted. Anyone who has driven around town knows that there's development happening in town. We had the developers of those projects provide us with enrollment projections. And the latest projection that we received says that if 400 units are developed in town, we will see 40 students as a result. I know. So we had our own study commissioned to look at the enrollment. And believe it or not, we were higher, but not by as much as you would think 400 units would result. But we have to be prepared for that. That's the reality. But as it stands right now, we need space. Even without a new student coming through the door, we need more space. And so we're not overbuilding. I don't believe we're underbuilding. There's a aidability range that the state provides because we do get reimbursed on the construction costs. And we are going to go to that threshold of 6 classrooms in each of the elementary schools based on our enrollment and our projections. The number of new students is to be determined. I think it will be somewhere higher than 9 out of 10 units bringing no children to the school district, and the 1 out of 10 units that remain bringing exactly 1 child to the school district. So that's how 40 out of 400 computes. But we still need the space regardless, and we can make that happen without any additional tax burden. Proposition 2 is as we laid out. We're still reviewing that proposition. The way it would work is if Proposition 1 passes, then Proposition 2 would pass. 1 would have to pass in order for 2 to be considered. We're still, like I said, refining. We're meeting actually tomorrow. The steering committee meets every 2 weeks and spends hours reviewing each detail. And for anyone who's been in our high school gymnasium, I think that's just evidence of the amount of thought and detail that goes into the developments that we make around here. What I always share is we might be a little bit late to the dance, but when we do it better than anyone else in the region. And I look at these facilities that we're proposing, and then also recarpeting the existing turf field and putting a new state-of-the-art turf. And the infill would be an EDPM. Is that it? EPDM infill? And that is, I'm sorry? With a shock pad as well, so it's a little safer for our athletes. The infill is not the traditional rubber that's used. It's made up of tires that are recycled. This is a untreated virgin rubber that uses the same grade as children's toys. So this is certainly a higher threshold and a higher quality product that we're proposing. And I'm happy to take any questions from the board. This is a timeline that is quite aggressive, but there are many factors here that we have to consider to make this a tax-neutral bond for our community. And the aggressive timeline takes under consideration the retiring debt that we have and trying to time that out so that we can begin our debt service on the new project and having that coincide with the retiring debt, the aidability of the projects, the capital reserve funds that we have, and trying to put all of those together, working with our fiscal advisors and bond counsel to just make sure that we can leverage all of the different opportunities we have to make this tax neutral for the community. So that's where we are. We have Daryl and Tina here from Amasi Architects. They can answer any questions that the board has. I'm happy to answer them as best I can. Not much has changed. As I present every 2 weeks, the changes are very incremental at this point. I've attached some dollar figures for this go-round. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them. If not, I'm happy to move on to the second presentation.
Thank you. Cheryl, I'm going to skip you for right now because you have more knowledge. I'm going to go to Mike first. You have questions?
I'm just trying to understand the current turf field that we have. Part of this is to renovate that?
So separate.
But I don't see where that is in the number, so help break that out.
So in 2017, we established a capital reserve fund, and the voters have authorized investments in that capital reserve fund year after year. So we would be using existing monies that we already have independent of a bond to replace what's called the carpet, the top layer of that turf field. The drainage, the subflooring is already there. We would put a shock pad, the new turf, and the infill.
And that's slated to be done this summer.
We're hoping to have that done this summer.
So under proposal 1, we end up with 2 essentially new
Correct.
turf fields.
Right, the Charlie Murphy field that's
Yeah.
in existence now would be refreshed,
Yep.
including a resurfacing of the track, and then the baseball field with a multi-purpose field in the outfield.
And then proposition 2 is adding a third
Correct.
turf field
Correct.
into the mix.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
Catalina? Pete?
Just one question.
In the microphone, please.
Why is it split into 2
In
propositions?
the microphone.
Why is it split into 2 propositions?
So-
Why can't it be combined?
So the first proposition, everything in that proposition, to effectively run the school district, I need everything in that proposition 1. Those are emergent items. In 2 years from now, I can't promise you that we have enough room for our students. So we need, though it's going to be a real challenge to run the school district without the space, to continue with some of the without some of the upgrades that we need in our classrooms. Not having functioned cabinetry and storage spaces for our classrooms makes it a real challenge. So those are of an emergent nature. In Proposition 2, those are, I believe they're important items, but I can operate a school district without bathrooms outside. We'd like to have those, but the portable bathrooms can work. I think we can do better than that, but in Proposition 1, those are the just kind of the things that we absolutely need. And truth of the matter is, we had to pare that list down because when we first estimated, and we wanted to make it tax neutral. That was something we heard from our community, is we want a tax neutral proposal. So we put what we absolutely needed in order to continue our operations at the highest level that we can in Prop 1. And then Prop 2 has some of the other really important things, a generator to power critical infrastructure. That's really important. Power goes down. I live in town too. When you lose power, I lose power. I'd like to get a message out to our school community. Our internet, our servers all go down here when the power goes down. If I can keep the servers here operational, fire systems operational, the fridge, the freezers in our cafeteria, our main storage is in the high school. If we can keep those systems up and running, it's less lost food that the taxpayers pay for. It's less material that we just have to throw out that gets damaged. So those are important, but can we operate the school district without a generator? I suppose we could. We have. But those are items that we identified that were also very important, just not necessarily with the urgency that Prop 1 has.
Catalina, did you have a question?
Talking to the microphone.
Into the microphone. If the proposal goes through 1 and 2, would the two turf field be redone and the new turf field simultaneously?
So we would have to work with our construction managers to put a timeline together. We anticipate the existing turf field, that work happening this summer. So that's irrespective of Prop 1 and Prop 2. And then if Prop 1 passes and Prop 2 passes, we would certainly time out the work to minimize the downtime of the fields. It will take our fields offline for a little bit, the baseball field and the lower grass area. But we would work with our construction managers to time that out. We would obviously want the first turf field finished and done before we begin any work on the second and third turfs.
Cheryl?
Dr. Hatter, if you could just go through the next steps. I see there are some acronyms and terminology in there that I'm not sure everyone's familiar with. So just, if
Yeah.
you just define, as you go through the next steps, just define exactly what's going on according to the dates
So I'm going to rely
associated
on
with it.
I'm going to rely on my eyes. I have no notes,
Thank you.
so I'm going to rely on my eyes. I think the first acronym is SECRA. So that's an environmental review process that we have to go through because we are doing some substantial work outside. So all of the environmental considerations, drainage, water runoff, we have a wetlands area in proximity. Those are all things that have to go into the calculus and the planning. So a SECRA is an environmental review. The other acronyms that I'm seeing, obviously, I'm sorry?
EAF.
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 I'm sorry, the Environmental Assessment Review. Okay, EAF, I'm hearing PAF, I'm like, no, that's our ELA program. EAF is an environmental assessment review that we have to undergo as well.
Thank you.
These are standard, we actually, almost every project, you have some sort of a secret if you do it outside. This will be a much larger one because we're, hitting more spaces at all the buildings. I don't necessarily have questions because I meet every 2 weeks, so I know what's going on. I just want the community to know, we started out, it was almost $60 million, and we pared it down to the 46. We didn't stretch to get this. We worked hard to rein it in because we knew it was really important to keep it at a certain level for the community. And we're confident that we can do this. We have great architects, we have great construction managers, and we've had our construction manager for 18 years now. They haven't really led us astray, and they're the ones helping us with the numbers and understanding our process. So I know we have a lot more steps to go. we have more detail that will come as we go through this process. I don't know if anybody had any other questions. Go ahead, Mike.
I mean, so Catalina brought up a good point about how these things time out. And I know when we did our last bond, I think the projects were scheduled over like a 6-year period. What are we estimating that this is gonna take us if we did all, both pieces?
Those are questions that we're going to talk to our construction managers. We don't have that. We have to nail down scope before they can tell us how that they would do it. One of the things is they've always been very strict with us, and they lead us. They've been very strict with us. They will never take on more than they can promise to finish at a set time. So when we were doing all the renovations, we could only do enough in a summer that we could reopen school with.
Right.
Now, this would be a little bit different, but they would take the lead because they would know what is capable of being done.
And in general, and our construction managers are great. It will take multiple years. I don't think it'll take 6 years, but one of the things with us is when we give you a timeline, we're pretty good with the timelines. The gym was a huge renovation piece. We were there on time, open for school, and we met those deadlines. The cafeteria renovations were huge. Deadlines met, budget met, and that's why it takes us a little time to develop these plans, but once we do, we'll certainly share it, and once we do share the timeline, that's what we're sticking to.
Okay, that's fine. I just want the, the community to
Yeah.
understand that this isn't like we vote on it and next year all this stuff happens, right? This is gonna be,
This is multi-year.
it's gonna take a while to get to where we want.
The
to
state ed review is 8
Yeah,
months
could
or
be,
so.
state ed review could be a year. So
I get all
one of the things people have to understand is that we're hamstringed by certain things. Like, we can't have actual floor plans and designs because until the community says, yes, they will allow us to do this, then we can ask the architects to design anything. We're not allowed to spend taxpayer money without their approval. So,
So Jackie, to that, if, assuming it passes in February, what is it 1 year? Just an estimation, 1 year, 18
before
months?
we
2
even
years?
started, well, we don't know, we'd have to talk to the architects of how long it would take to actually design everything, and then it would have to go to state ed, and a lot of times your problem is how long state ed takes. State ed could take 6 weeks, it could take 6 months, it
That's
could
the
take a
wild part
year.
here.
That is and you have no control over how long that review would take, and you cannot start until they have given you the approvals.
They used to have a third-party expedited review where you can get it done in 8 weeks or whatever the time frame was. They've done away with that. It was just a system that they weren't able to sustain, so they're back to the 6 to 10 month window.
But
I don't know if
sitting in-
Daryl and Tina know what the timeline is,
I
if
think
they.
we'll develop that. I don't know if there is any
Okay.
way to find out if there's a timeline at this point.
No,
so
they
it's
sometimes
something-
know general timelines up at state
SED
ed.
review is how long, Darren? 6 to 8 months.
Currently, yeah, and that could change.
And
yeah.
it changes.
So realistically, this is 1 year to 18 months out before,
We even
Or
put a
shovel
shovel
goes
to the
into the
ground,
ground.
at least.
and really they're setting the expectation to the community and that this is not going to, happen next September.
No, that's why it's critical we
Yep.
start now, because we are having to face these problems coming up.
So at our next board meeting, I'll provide another update. So whatever transpires at tomorrow's meeting will again be turned around as an update to the community when we meet next.
Okay, did anybody have any more questions? Are we good?